Have you ever had someone take your words, twist them into something you never meant, and then use them against you? You say something completely reasonable, yet suddenly you're accused of saying something outrageous. You try to defend yourself, but the more you explain, the guiltier you look. It's frustrating. It's manipulative. And worst of all, it's a common tactic used by people who want to control conversations, win arguments unfairly, or even damage your reputation. They do it to disarm you, to make you doubt yourself, and to put you on the defensive. But here's the truth. The moment you start defending yourself against words you never actually said, you've already lost. So today, I'm going to teach you how to deal with people who twist your words, how to stop them in their tracks, take control of the conversation, and never fall into their trap again. By the way, if you enjoy deep, thought-provoking insights on Stoicism, self-improvement, and navigating life with wisdom, you'll love my free newsletter. Every Sunday, I share powerful lessons, controversial truths, and practical strategies to help you level up, all for free. Want to join? Sign up using the link below and start receiving value-packed content straight to your inbox every week. And if you're a brand looking to sponsor my content and reach a highly engaged audience, feel free to reach out via my email in the description. Let's create something impactful together. Repeat your actual statement. When someone twists your words, your first instinct is often to defend yourself. You might say, "That's not what I meant." You're taking it out of context. You're twisting my words. But here's the problem. The moment you defend yourself, you've already lost. Why? Because now you're not arguing about what you actually said. You're arguing about their twisted version. You've been lured into their game, and that's exactly what they want. The psychology behind twisting words. Let's get real for a second. Why do people do this? To manipulate perception. They know that perception beats reality. If they can convince others that you said something offensive, insulting, or unreasonable, they don't need to prove you wrong. They just need to paint you in a bad light. To gain the upper hand, twisting words forces you into defense mode, making you look weaker while they look like the reasonable one. To get an emotional reaction. They want you to get angry, frustrated, or flustered. The moment you react emotionally, they can say, "See, look how defensive you're getting." To control the narrative. If they can redefine your words, they can shift the conversation away from facts and into their preferred version of events. A personal experience that taught me this the hard way. I learned this lesson years ago when I had a disagreement with a coworker. We were discussing a project, and I said, "I think we should explore another approach." Harmless, right? A normal conversation. But later, I overheard her telling others, "He said my idea was stupid and that I don't know what I'm doing." That wasn't just an exaggeration. It was a complete lie. At first, I was furious. I wanted to confront her, to argue, to prove that I never said those words. But then I realized something. If I fight her twisted version, I'm giving it power. E2. Document the conversation. We live in an age where truth is flexible, where people will rewrite history in real time if it serves their agenda. If you rely solely on memory in an argument, you've already lost. Because here's the harsh truth. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. Many people see keeping records as extreme, even paranoid. But ask anyone who's ever been falsely accused, misquoted, or manipulated. They'll tell you that proof is the only thing that separates reality from deception. Manipulators count on ambiguity, on the fact that you won't have evidence to contradict them. That's why documentation is your best weapon. Why manipulators hate written proof. People who twist your words love vague, informal conversations. They thrive in verbal exchanges where they can later claim they misheard or misunderstood you. The second you introduce documentation, texts, emails, voice recordings where legally allowed, you take away their biggest weapon, the ability to gaslight you. A personal example. Years ago, I had a colleague who would constantly shift blame onto others. One day, after giving her some instructions over the phone, she later denied that I had ever told her what to do. I learned my lesson that day. From that point forward, I followed up every verbal conversation with an email summary. The moment she tried to twist my words again, I simply forwarded the email where she had confirmed my instructions. She never pulled that stunt again. The modern witness, your digital paper trail. Not all proof has to be dramatic. A simple text message can prevent a week of back-and-forth arguments. An email chain can save you from being scapegoated. Even jotting down notes from a conversation can serve as a record when people try to rewrite history. Here's what you can do. Follow up in writing. After an important conversation, send a summary via text, email, or even a shared document. Something as simple as, "Hey, just to confirm, we agreed that X would happen and you mentioned Y, right?" can shut down future manipulation. Record where legal. In some places, you're allowed to record conversations without the other party's consent. Know your local laws, and if it's legal, use it as a last resort for serious situations. Take screenshots. People will edit messages, delete comments, and pretend certain things were never said. Screenshots are your best friend. Use timelines and logs. If you're dealing with someone who constantly changes their story, keep a record of what was said, when, and by whom. This makes it impossible for them to retroactively twist the narrative. What if they call you paranoid? Here's the funny thing. Only dishonest people fear documentation. If you mention keeping records and someone gets defensive, that's a red flag. Honest people don't mind written proof because the truth is on their side. I've seen people get furious when they realize their own words are on record. They'll call you paranoid, controlling, or say, "Why don't you just trust me?" The real question is, why are they so afraid of proof? If they had nothing to hide, documentation wouldn't be a problem. Deep message. The truth shouldn't be fleeting. We live in an era where people rewrite events for convenience, where a simple "I never said that" can be used to erase reality. Documentation is not just about winning arguments, it's about protecting the truth from being twisted beyond recognition. If someone calls you obsessive for keeping records, let them. The alternative is letting liars control the story. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the ones who document the truth are the ones who shape it. 3. Play dumb to make them overreach. One of the most effective ways to deal with someone who twists your words is to act as if you don't understand what they're saying. This forces them to over-explain, often leading them to contradict themselves or expose their own manipulation. Instead of immediately jumping into defense mode, take a step back and put them in a position where they have to spell out their twisted logic. Why it works. Manipulative people rely on quick reactions. They want you to get emotional, defensive, and flustered. But when you act confused instead of reacting, it throws them off their game. They have to work harder to make their twisted versions sound believable, which often results in them making mistakes or revealing their true intent. How to do it? When someone misrepresents your words, respond with something like, "Wait, I don't get it. How does what I said mean that? Can you explain it again? I want to make sure I fully understand your logic. I must be missing something. Walk me through how you got to that conclusion. By pretending you don't understand, you force them to expose the flaws in their argument. Most of the time, they won't be able to do it without sounding ridiculous. Example. Situation. Let's say you make a simple statement like, "I think we should focus on improving teamwork in the office," but then someone twists it into, "So you're saying everyone here is terrible at working together?" Instead of getting defensive, play dumb. "Oh, that's interesting. How did you get that from what I said? I thought I was just suggesting ways to improve teamwork. Can you break it down for me?" Now they have to explain their logic. If they double down, it will become increasingly clear to others that they're stretching the truth. A personal experience. I once had a coworker who would constantly twist my words in meetings to make me look bad. One time, I suggested that our team try a different approach to managing deadlines. Within minutes, he spun it into, "So, you think our current system is a complete failure and that we're all incompetent?" Instead of snapping back, I simply asked, "Oh, is that what you heard?" "That's interesting. Can you explain how you got there?" He stammered, tried to backtrack, and ultimately looked foolish in front of everyone. That's when I realized that acting confused is one of the best ways to expose a manipulator. The psychological trick behind this tactic. People who twist words are used to controlling conversations. They expect you to react emotionally and fight back. But when you slow down and pretend not to understand, it forces them to take responsibility for their own misrepresentation. The more they try to justify their twisted version, the more obvious their manipulation becomes. A deep message, confusion can be a weapon. In life, we're taught to always have quick responses, to defend ourselves immediately when someone misrepresents us. But sometimes, the smartest response is no response at all. Just a well-placed question that forces the other person to expose themselves. Manipulators hate two things: having to explain themselves too much, being unable to provoke a reaction from you. So the next time someone twists your words, don't get angry, just act confused and watch them dig their own hole. 4. Use humor to diffuse and disarm. When someone twists your words, they expect you to get angry, defensive, or flustered, because that's how they maintain control. But do you know what they don't expect? For you to laugh it off. Humor is an incredibly underrated weapon in an argument. It throws manipulators off balance, neutralizes tension, and even makes them look foolish without you having to argue why humor works. Humor does three things in an argument. It shifts the power dynamic. When you laugh instead of react emotionally, it signals that you're in control, not them. It exposes the ridiculousness of their manipulation. A well-placed joke can make their twisting of your words look absurd. It makes others see through their tactics. If you're in a group setting, people are more likely to realize the manipulator is being dishonest. The key is to use humor strategically, not defensively. You're not laughing to avoid the issue. You're laughing to highlight how ridiculous their twist is. How to use humor. When someone twists your words, one, call out their logic in a playful way. Sometimes, just exaggerating their misrepresentation makes their manipulation obvious. You, I think we need to budget better. Them, oh, so you're saying we're all irresponsible? You, yep, you got me. In fact, I think we should all just start paying our bills with monopoly money. By taking their misinterpretation and pushing it into absurdity, you highlight how unreasonable it is. 2. Use sarcasm to flip the narrative. A well-placed sarcastic remark can make their twisting of words seem downright silly. Them, so you're saying you're better than everyone? You, exactly. I'm just waiting for my trophy to arrive in the mail. Delivered with a smirk, this kind of response makes it impossible for them to take their own argument seriously. 3. Laugh at the situation, not at them. If you laugh at the person twisting your words, they'll just get more aggressive. Instead, laugh at the absurdity of the situation itself. Them. So you think my ideas are stupid? You, laughing. Wow, I didn't realize I had so much power over what you think. Should I also decide what you have for lunch? This keeps things light-hearted yet firm, showing that you're not taking their bait. Personal experience. How I used humor to win an argument. I once had a coworker who loved twisting people's words in meetings. One day, I made a simple suggestion about improving efficiency. He immediately twisted it. "Oh, so you're saying we're all lazy and bad at our jobs?" I could have gotten defensive. I could have argued back. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, smiled, and said, "Exactly. In fact, I think we should all just take naps under our desks from now on. Pure efficiency." The room erupted in laughter, and just like that, his manipulation fell apart. Because the moment people laugh at a manipulator, their power disappears. The deep message: humor is a silent weapon. The greatest trick of manipulators is making you take them seriously. They thrive on control, tension, and emotional reactions. But humor destroys all of that. When you laugh, you show that they don't have power over your emotions. And when you expose their ridiculousness in a light-hearted way, others start to see through their game too. So the next time someone twists your words, don't argue. Make them a joke, and let everyone else laugh at how absurd they sound. 5. Stick to yes or no answers. One of the most effective ways to shut down someone who twists your words is to limit your responses to simple yes or no answers. Manipulators thrive on ambiguity and long-winded explanations. The more you talk, the easier it is for them to distort what you say. By stripping your responses down to only what is necessary, you take away their ability to twist your words and use them against you. This might feel unnatural at first. Most people are wired to explain themselves, provide context, or soften their words to avoid conflict. But when dealing with someone who twists your words, every extra sentence you offer gives them another weapon to use against you. By sticking to yes or no, you shut that door completely. Why yes or no answers? Work, they eliminate wiggle room. A manipulator can't easily twist a simple yes or no the way they can twist a long response. They force the other person to be direct. When you stop engaging in long discussions, they can't drag you into their manipulative tactics. They put the burden of explanation on them. If they want more, they have to clarify their own argument instead of twisting yours. They show confidence and control. When you respond concisely, it signals that you're not going to be emotionally dragged into their game. How to use yes or no answers to your advantage. 1. Stop feeding the manipulation. The more words you use, the more opportunities they have to twist them. Keeping it short and unemotional takes away their ability to misrepresent what you said. 2. Flip the pressure back onto them. When they don't get the long-winded answer they were hoping to manipulate, they'll struggle to keep the argument going. They expect resistance, explanations, or defensiveness. By not giving them any of that, you shift the burden back onto them. 3. Make them reveal their own intentions. Manipulators often hide behind indirect wording, hoping you'll give them something to twist. Yes or no answers force them to be explicit about what they're accusing you of. This exposes their tactics and makes it harder for them to continue distorting the conversation. A personal experience. How I shut down a manipulator. I once had a friend who loved to bait people into arguments. He'd ask leading questions, twist responses, and then act outraged over things you never actually said. One day, instead of engaging in a back and forth, I decided to answer only with yes or no. The shift was immediate. He was thrown off, unable to twist my words because I wasn't giving him anything to work with. Without my usual explanations, he had no material to manipulate. The argument fizzled out before it could even begin. This technique also works in professional settings. Manipulative bosses or co-workers often use similar tactics, twisting words to shift blame or create confusion. When you stick to short, direct answers, you remove the possibility of misinterpretation and force them to confront what they're actually saying. The deep message: stop explaining yourself. Most people feel the need to defend and justify themselves, even when they've done nothing wrong. But manipulators use that against you. The more you explain, the more they can distort. Think about how many times you've tried to clarify something only to have your words taken out of context. It's exhausting. But what if you stopped playing their game? By keeping your responses short and direct, you take away their power. You force them to confront what they're actually saying instead of hiding behind manipulative tactics. So, next time someone tries to twist your words, don't fall into their trap. Stick to yes or no. Watch them struggle and walk away knowing you just outplayed them. 6. Use precise language to prevent misinterpretation. People who twist your words rely on vague statements, emotional ambiguity, and loosely framed arguments to manipulate the conversation. The more unclear your words, the easier it is for them to take what you said and distort it into something you never intended. That's why using precise, carefully chosen language is one of the most powerful tools you have to shut them down. Why precision matters in arguments. It removes loopholes for manipulation. If your words are airtight, there's no room for twisting or misrepresenting them. It forces clarity in the conversation. Manipulators thrive in confusion, but when you are clear, they lose their advantage. It keeps the focus on facts, not emotions. Emotional language can be exaggerated or reinterpreted, but precise wording leaves little room for debate. It stops unnecessary back and forth. When your words are clear from the start, you don't have to keep explaining yourself. How to use precise language. Effectively, 1. Avoid broad, general statements. Vague words like always, never, or everyone are easy to twist. Instead of saying, "You always misunderstand me," say, "In our last 2 conversations, you misrepresented what I said." This leaves no room for argument over the word always. 2. Define your terms clearly. If you're discussing something complex, define your terms early. Many manipulative arguments rely on intentionally vague definitions so that they can shift meanings as needed. By defining your terms up front, you prevent them from playing that game. 3. Use direct, simple sentences. The more complex your sentence, the easier it is for a manipulator to take pieces out of context. Keep your statements short, clear, and direct. Instead of saying, "I feel like sometimes you might take my words the wrong way," say, "You misquoted me just now." 4. Rephrase their distortion and correct it immediately. When someone twists your words, don't get caught up in their version of events. Instead, immediately restate what you actually meant in clear, concise terms. This puts the focus back on facts and prevents them from controlling the narrative. 5. Use written communication when necessary. If you're dealing with someone who repeatedly twists your words, it may be better to communicate in writing. This ensures that your exact words are documented, making it harder for them to misrepresent you later. In professional or legal settings, having a record of what was actually said can be crucial. A personal experience: how precision shut down a manipulator. I once had a co-worker who loved to put words in people's mouths. If you made a casual suggestion, he'd reframe it as an absolute demand. If you raised a concern, he'd act like you were making a personal attack. One day, during a team meeting, I made a simple comment about a project timeline. He immediately twisted it, saying, "So what you're saying is that you think we're all incompetent and can't meet deadlines." Instead of reacting emotionally, I calmly replied, "No, what I said was that we need an additional 2 days to complete this task properly. That's a factual observation, not a judgment of anyone's ability." His tactic fell apart instantly. Because I restated my point with precision, he couldn't continue twisting it. The meeting moved on, and I never let him trap me with word games again. The deep message: precision is power. Manipulators use ambiguity as a weapon, but precision is your shield. The clearer your words, the less control they have over you. Most arguments don't escalate because of what was actually said. They escalate because of how words are twisted, reinterpreted, and distorted. But when you strip away vagueness and emotional ambiguity, you leave no room for manipulation. Being precise doesn't mean being robotic. It means being intentional. It means choosing your words carefully, owning your statements, and refusing to let anyone else define your meaning for you. So, next time someone tries to twist your words, don't give them any loose ends to pull on. Be clear, be precise, and watch their manipulation crumble under the weight of your clarity. 7. Remember, some people can't be reasoned with. One of the hardest lessons to accept in life is that not everyone argues in good faith. You might assume that if you just explain yourself better, clarify your words, or stay calm, the other person will eventually understand and stop twisting your words. But some people don't want to understand you. They want to manipulate, dominate, and win. This is where many people waste their time and energy, stuck in pointless battles with individuals who have no interest in the truth. The key to avoiding this trap is recognizing when you're up against someone who isn't seeking resolution, but rather control. Why some people can't be reasoned with: they thrive on conflict. Some people argue not to reach a solution, but because they enjoy stirring up drama and keeping others emotionally engaged. They have a deep need to be right. Admitting they misquoted you or misunderstood you would mean losing face, and they'd rather twist reality than do that. They use manipulation as a tool. For them, twisting words isn't a misunderstanding. It's a deliberate tactic to control the conversation and make you defensive. They refuse to accept accountability. If they acknowledged your actual words, they'd have to own up to their own mistakes or flaws, and they're not willing to do that. How to identify someone who can't be reasoned with? They ignore your clarifications. No matter how clearly you restate your original statement, they pretend they didn't hear it and continue misrepresenting you. They move the goalposts. If you prove their interpretation of your words is wrong, they shift the argument to something else instead of admitting their mistake. They gaslight you. They act as if you're the one twisting things, making you doubt your own memory and perception. They create a never-ending loop. The argument keeps cycling back to the same distorted points, no matter how many times you correct them. At some point, you have to recognize the game being played. You're not in a discussion. You're in a psychological tug-of-war with someone who has no intention of being fair. The power of walking away. Here's something many people struggle to accept. You don't have to prove yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Most of the time, the smartest move is to disengage completely. You don't owe anyone an endless debate, especially not someone who is twisting your words on purpose. By walking away, you deny them the control they crave. Some people see walking away as losing the argument. But the truth is, the real loss is wasting time on someone who has no interest in honest communication. Winning doesn't mean beating them in a debate. It means refusing to be pulled into their toxic cycle in the first place. A personal experience, arguing with the unreasonable. I once had a conversation with someone who twisted everything I said. If I made a neutral observation, they'd twist it into an insult. If I clarified, they'd claim I was backtracking. If I asked them to repeat what they thought I said, they'd change the subject. It took me a while to realize that they weren't misunderstanding me. They were intentionally distorting things to frustrate me and control the conversation. At first, I kept trying to fix the misunderstanding. I kept explaining, rewording, and proving my point. But nothing worked, because they didn't want resolution. They wanted to exhaust me. Eventually, I just stopped engaging. I let them say whatever they wanted and moved on. And do you know what happened? They lost all their power over me. The deep message: protect your energy. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every argument is worth winning. Some people weaponize conversations to drain your energy, trigger your emotions, and keep you trapped in their manipulative web. The moment you recognize this, you gain control, not by arguing harder, but by choosing to disengage. Being right isn't the goal. Protecting your peace is. So, the next time someone twists your words and refuses to engage honestly, don't fall for the trap. Let them believe whatever they want. Let them twist and distort until they're arguing with themselves. You have better things to do than fight a battle that was never meant to be fair. At the end of the day, people who twist your words do it for control. Control over the conversation, control over your emotions, and sometimes even control over your reputation. But now, you know better. You know how to call them out, stay calm, and refuse to engage in their manipulative tactics. Remember this: you don't have to prove yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to argue with someone who only wants to twist your words. Some battles aren't worth fighting, and some people aren't worth reasoning with. The most powerful thing you can do: stay clear, stay firm, and when necessary, walk away. Because when you refuse to play their game, you win every time.